Hello. I thought I'd put another plug in for Warren Wiersbe's books. These are great starters on any Bible book. The B series, Be Satisfied. This is on Ecclesiastes. I'll give you a sample of how Wiersbe approaches a Bible book. This is what he says about Ecclesiastes in his intro. Solomon, he believes, wrote both Proverbs and the Song of Solomon, as well as Ecclesiastes. That's the conservative position that Jehovah's Witnesses, among others, would also espouse. That is not necessarily the position of most commentaries and expositions on Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon, and even Proverbs today. Mind you, there's allowance for a range of opinions on these books, because some of them don't make an explicit claim themselves as to an exclusive authorship. But that's another issue. Wiersbe says he wrote, that is, Solomon wrote Proverbs from the viewpoint of a wise teacher, and Song of Solomon from the viewpoint of a royal lover. But when he wrote Ecclesiastes, he called himself the preacher. The Hebrew word is koheleth. He gives the pronunciation, by the way, for koheleth. And it is the title given to an official speaker who calls an assembly. The Greek word for assembly is ecclesia, and this gives us the English title of the book, Ecclesiastes. You can probably guess even from those Hebrew and Greek words that they're connected, koheleth and ecclesia. But the preacher did more than call an assembly and give an oration. The word koheleth carries with it the idea of a debating, not so much with the listeners as with himself. He would present a topic, discuss it from many viewpoints, and then come to practical conclusion. Ecclesiastes may appear to be a random collection of miscellaneous ideas about a variety of topics, but Solomon assures us that what he wrote was orderly. That is 12 verse 9. Let's consider now the aim and development of the book. The aim. Solomon has put the key to Ecclesiastes right at the front door. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit hath a man of all his labor which he taketh under the sun? Quoting, of course, from the King James. Just in case we missed it, he put the same key at the back door. That is in 12 verse 8. He repeats that idea. In these verses, Solomon introduces some of the key words and phrases that are used repeatedly in Ecclesiastes, so we had better get acquainted with them. Of vanity of vanities, he says, we have already noted that Solomon used the word vanity 38 times in this book. It is the Hebrew word hevel, meaning emptiness, futility, or vapor. The name Abel probably comes from this word. Genesis 4 verse 2 he cites as referencing the man Abel, the son of Adam and Eve. Whatever disappears quickly, leaves nothing behind, and does not satisfy is hevel, vanity. One of my language professors at seminary defined hevel as, quote, whatever is left after you break a soap bubble, unquote. Whether he considers his wealth, his works, his wisdom, or his world, Solomon comes to the same sad conclusion: all is vanity and vexation of spirit. However, this is not his final conclusion, nor is it the only message that he has for his readers. We will discover more about that later. Then he discusses the phrase under the sun. And by the way, we have referred to these same repeated phrases in our little expositions of Ecclesiastes back in the series, I think it was called What J.W. Org is Not Telling You About Life After Death. You will find this important phrase, that is under the sun, 29 times in Ecclesiastes, and with it the phrase under heaven. It defines the outlook of the writer as he looks at life from a human perspective, and not necessarily from heaven's point of view. He applies his own wisdom and experience to the complex human situation and tries to make some sense out of life. Solomon wrote under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, so Wiersbe is very clear as to where he gets his ultimate authority from. But he acknowledges here that he's expressing what he claims to be his own wisdom based primarily upon his own experience. So what he wrote, Wiersbe continues, was what God wanted his people to have, but that adds another complexity to how you interpret the various statements in the book. Wiersbe goes on, but as we study, we must keep Solomon's viewpoint in mind. He is examining life under the sun. And then he quotes from another famous Bible teacher, G. Campbell Morgan, in his book, Unfolding Message of the Bible. Morgan perfectly summarizes Solomon's outlook. Quote, this man had been living through all these experiences under the sun, concerned with nothing above the sun, until there came a moment in which he had seen the whole of life. And there was something over the sun. It is only as a man takes account of that which is over the sun, as well as that which is under the sun, that things under the sun are seen in their true light. Later in the book, Ecclesiastes discusses laziness, and in that, of course, Wiersbe is very conservative in his position. He believes that Solomon himself is personally responsible for these comments. He says this about laziness. It must have been difficult for him to watch an idle man, because Solomon had no sympathy for lazy people who sat all day with folded hands and did nothing. And then he cites a bunch of passages from Proverbs on that very subject. Solomon learned nothing he didn't already know. Laziness is a slow, comfortable path toward self-destruction. It may be pleasant to sleep late every morning and not have to go to work, but it's unpleasant not to have money to buy the necessities of life. Let me sleep a little longer. Sure, just a little more. And as you sleep, poverty creeps upon you like a robber and destroys you. Want attacks you in full armor. And this is a direct quote from Proverbs 6:10-11 in the Living Bible. Paul stated it bluntly. If any would not work, neither should he eat. That 2 Thessalonians 3 verse 10. Now, why do I think this is important? Because if we have a problem nowadays, most of us, it's with being too busy, not being too lazy. However, the byproduct of that is that we tend to get lazy spiritually. We depend upon teachers or favorite teachers or TV shows or cults to give us the information, the spiritual insight we need. This is not good. And of course, Solomon would never support that approach to life. He, if anyone ever could have been spending most of his time on his couch or divan. But we know if any man ever defined human curiosity on every level, it was Solomon himself. We say we see from the book of Kings, not only did he spend much time gathering Proverbs, which became the core of the book of Proverbs, but he seemed to be curious about everything in nature. He was a naturalist, according to the testimony of 1 Kings. So Solomon apparently saw that most men and women were not like him. And certainly today, curiosity has been killed. It's being killed in our children by technology, among other things. But we in the Christian community should never give in to sloth. Now, of course, if you know the 7 deadly sins of the traditions of medieval Christianity, sloth was among them. You never hear talk of sloth today. Mental laziness. But the very presence of cults and churches that create dependent situations for most of us is a testimony to the fact that sloth is indeed a major problem for Christians. So, loyal to the text, Wiersbe says, no, this is one very large issue for the writer of Ecclesiastes and the writer of Proverbs, the writers of Proverbs, because there were several. So I would say if you want a starter that does justice to the text and attacks the issues from a conservative point of view, you can't do better or much better than Warren Wiersbe. Be Satisfied, from the B series.